Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. We got Biggie and Rudo coming to you live on a Tuesday. We ranked pretty much every player in the Central Division, I think, at this point. So we've got our players covered, but what about the coaches of the Central Division? We got to talk about them too. We'll see where each team is at because there is a little bit of a shakeup in the division. Obviously, no Pete Deboer anymore. It maybe opened some doors. I don't know. Maybe you thought Jared Bednar was the top coach in the division anyway, even with his inability to beat Pete Deboer. But we'll get into all of that. A little bit of news first before that. First of all, Eric's favorite goalie, Dustin Wolf, signed 7 years, $7.5 million with Calgary. I know you love Wolfie and he's the goalie of the future and all that. All great. When it comes to looking at the Avs, you look at some of the deals they've got done over this offseason, the last couple of seasons. We talked about the Nazar deal earlier this year. This one, does it not make that Blackwood deal look pretty decent?
I think so. I thought the Blackwood deal, when it happened, I thought it was a great deal for the Avalanche. Just the way the cap's going, the way things were going to go, like as they were discussing last year. And obviously that was before it was announced that it was going to go up the way it's been going up. Now, on a deal like Wolf, different expectations, right? Calgary, it's like they almost made the playoffs last year. Now they're going to put the pressure on themselves to make the playoffs. Different expectations than the Avs. But you're right. You look at the Nazar deal, you look at this deal, and clearly this league is all about what you believe that the asset's going to do for you in the future, right? And it's been like this for a while. Like I said, the days are long gone of, all of a sudden you win, then you get paid. It's the opposite. You get paid to see if you can go win with these guys, So I like Dustin Wolf. I love him, actually. I love the path. I love everything about him. But it's a big number for, what is he, 71 games played? So it's a big number. Things will change, as we saw with Swayman last year too, And again, I don't know Wolfie personally like that, but it's like now you got the pressure of, and I know a lot of people will say, I think we asked Gretz, remember? I think Gretz said it. He's like, no, we don't care, like the money we make and the pressure. I think it goes hand in hand. I think you just tend to forget about it when you're one of those top guys, But at the end of the day, it's still with you. And the first thing that if it doesn't go well that they'll talk about is the contract. That's just what it is with those top end players. I don't care what it is. If you're a league minimum guy, they're like, oh, put that bum in the minors, right? You know what I mean? So I think the contract goes with it. We'll see what happens, but it's a big number. Good on him. He's a wonderful kid and wonderful story and last pick of the draft, whatever you want to call that. And just shows you it doesn't matter. But that's big news, but it does make the Blackwood deal look pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, if you ask anybody today, do you take Blackwood or Dustin Wolf? I mean, I'm not saying I love Dustin Wolf, but I think you're gonna get a lot of Blackwoods. You know what I mean? And I love Blackwood too. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty good number for the Avalanche when you're looking at things like that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's obviously Wolf has the potential to be a star goalie in the league. Not quite there yet, probably. But Blackwood, if Blackwood is just solid, you're getting good contract value. And we talked the other day about the goalies with some of the underlying stats of Blackwood. There's potential that he's a top 5 goalie in the league if everything goes great. So it does seem like another good value contract. The Avs seem to have a knack for that. As long as they're not signing a bottom 6 forward, They usually get pretty good contract value out of their guys. All right. We can pivot into the actual show. Actually, before we do pivot into the show, there is officially 28 days left until Hockey That Matters for the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
If you haven't been watching on Twitter, Tiff has been posting a bunch of fights. So here you go, E. Do you remember this fight?
Yeah.
Throwing hands?
Yeah, it's against Brian Noonan, and this guy was way tougher than I was. Trust me. And I got right there. It actually looks good, but it's Audrey behind me, like yelling at me, which is nice. But Noonan was a lot tougher than I was. He was a lefty. And how do I know he was a lefty? Because I didn't give him a chance there. I kind of jumped on him and nothing really happened. I didn't give him a chance. And then later in the third period, I had to fight him, but squaring off. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, it didn't go well. That's when I realized he was a lefty. He got me right on the button, and then I went down pretty quick. I was like, oh boy. Yeah. So trust me, Brian Noonan was a good player. He was tough, but this looks actually good for me. But if we put the one about, I don't know, 45 minutes later on that one, it doesn't look very good on me. But keep that one up.
Yeah, we'll only talk about this one. We'll call it good.
Yeah.
Be a good fight for you on the list. It's getting there though. Less than a month away from real hockey for the Avs and for the NHL. You're getting leagues that are starting up. The KHL started up over the last weekend. I don't know. Obviously, the rookie stuff starts this weekend. When do you actually start to feel like it's time to go again?
Yeah, I feel that it's been pretty good because, like you said, the KHL. Then you see some highlights. Then you see, news about the Spangler Cup this year because it's going to be an NCAA team and the staff that's being announced. Then you see all the college teams and the McKenna sweepstakes has started, right? And then obviously him at Penn State, and then DU and BUBC. All those teams have all started now. Everything is real. It's no more captain's practices there, and it's like training camps have started for those teams. Then the junior teams have started. I think you're seeing a lot of hockey. I think you're seeing everything, and I think for the Avalanche and what we do, which starts with the rookie face-off. You get all excited, you get all amped up, you get all pumped, and then all of a sudden, like about 5-6 days into it, you're like, man, can we get to the real games quick? You know what I mean? Because as we know, it's like it drags a little bit. Next year will be better, obviously, with the training camp shortened and only having two exhibition game or four exhibition, whatever.
Four.
Yeah, so guys are going to play in two, and it's like perfect, and the season will start quicker and then end earlier. So you're talking about another year of this stuff, but you know what? It's not that bad. I'm an older guy. I can tell you that the early 90s and late 80s, and oh my Lord, some coaches were taking this to another level. And, you were at the rink in the morning, 9 to 12. Then there was a lunch and meetings. Then you were at the rink 2 to 5. And it was ridiculous. You know what I mean? And so at least now it's all regulated. Every team's the same. Can't be at the rink longer than 3 hours. And, and then you got the mandatory day off each week and all that kind of stuff. So, you know what, as brutal as it gets, I think it's more the anxiety and the being anxious of, you, me, everyone, fans, coaches, players of, once you're in it and it starts, then you get excited. But then after a while, you're like, okay, we get this thing started. When is that first real puck drop, Yeah. So I think we're going to be following that real soon here.
Yep. AJ recently put out his prediction for the 23-man roster for the Avs. Go check that out. And then obviously as rookie camp and training camp gets started, you'll have us 5 days a week checking things out. So keep it posted here. We'll have all the info for you. For today's show, head coaches of the Central Division. Let's just start with the Avs conversation, and then we'll go alphabetically after that. But Jared Bednar, he's got the most wins in the regular season of any of the coaches currently in the Central Division. Despite him being the longest tenured coach of the bunch, he has fewer losses than a couple of coaches in the Central Division. He's the only Central Division coach with a Stanley Cup. Is he the best coach in the Central? At least head coach? Is Jared Bednar number one on that list right now?
Yeah, I think he has to be. And that record is splendid when you think about it, with that horrific first season that he had. You know,
yep.
Can you imagine that? Imagine if he had an unbelievable one. The record would look so different. I think you have to give him the nod, not because it's an Avs show, because he's the only one with a cup. So when you're the only one with a cup, puts you in a different. And again, he didn't win the Stanley Cup. The team won the Stanley Cup, and no individual players won the Stanley Cup either. But what I'm saying is, your job is to coach. Your job is to lead, and those jobs, him and Prater, and again now Ray, not there anymore, and Brett in the video room, and the video, and what's his name, your goalie coach, right? I was gonna say Patterson, but it's not. It's UC. God, I have a blank here.
Parkala.
Yeah, I kept saying Patterson because of Patterson and this that we had. Finnish names are the best, but yeah, I mean those guys did a phenomenal job, just like the front office did. But I think you have to give them the nod because they've won. They're always there. He's dealt with injuries over the years. He's dealt with superstars. He's dealt with, I think the first thing that you can see, that you can say that went sideways a little bit, it's last year's playoffs with the power play, right? And it cost Ray's job, right? You know what I mean? So I think in the era of Jared and company, I think you haven't seen a lot of negatives. But I think we talked about it at length on this one. We felt there was a negative, the power play, right? And at many times during the season, we felt that it was going to bite them, and hopefully not at the wrong time, and it did. And and again, unfortunately, it cost a good man his job, Ray. But as a staff, they've been phenomenal. They got everything, from the defensive structure to hunting pucks to the superstars and to creating offense and everything. So somewhere, somehow, it's tough to not give him the nod at number one. Obviously, you're only as good as your staff, right? So obviously he's got a great staff, and now you got a little bit of change with Ray gone, and we'll see what it's going to do. And obviously, even on the skill side of things, which doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's the most important, but it's still a little bit of change. You know what I mean? And Toby's gone, Peterson, and now Mark will come in and do the job, and you got to be in sync, right? You know what I mean? And that's coaching's all about a fit. In my book, it's no different than a player. Sometimes you can be a great coach, you go to a team and you're just a bad fit. Just the way your thought process is on the game, it's just not good with the elements that you're at your disposition, meaning like the type of players you have. So I mean, I think he's a perfect fit for the Avalanche. I think they've grown together. As he's grown as a coach, and he's grown with the Makars, McKinnons, Gabes, and the leadership group. And I think they grew together as a coaching staff and as a core. And and you got to make sure that they see eye to eye. I hear old horror stories every year, every summer on relationships between coaches and management. Right? I mean, it's not always great. Here in Colorado, you have a good one, you have a solid one, you have a respectful one. So tough to not have those guys at the top of the list of the Central Division.
Yeah, it goes even further than that, and sure, should the seat probably be a little warm because they have a bunch of first round exits? They won second round appearance in the last 3 years, sure, but that's more of an internal comparison for what the Avs' expectations are than Jared Bednar compared to the rest of the division. In which all of the coaches besides Bednar in the division have never even made a conference final. The second round is the farthest any of them have made it. So when you're comparing to the division, it's pretty clear cut to me that Bednar is the best coach, at least head coach in the division. I don't really think you can make an argument otherwise. Yes, the Avs are a good team, and that helps Bednar, sure. He's also had this team tracking for 50 wins 5 seasons in a row. I know he came a little bit short last year, but in the COVID shortened years, he was still tracking the team for 50 wins. It just season wasn't long enough. So it's not just that the Avs are really good. Bednar is also a really good coach for them specifically, like you were talking about. The fit there is obviously very, very good. Now you need to see results this year too, I think. Um, you can't have another first round exit. And obviously if you look at the years, there are explanations there, right? The Nichushkin situation, the two of those years, the injuries they've gone through some of these seasons, those things do matter. But at the end of the day, it's a results driven league, and realistically, expectations for the Avs, I think, should be a conference finals. Now, if they make the second round and look really good and some crazy stuff happens, whatever. If they make the first round and nonsense happens again, I'm not saying Bednar deserves to be fired. You have to take context into account. But I think certainly internally they believe the team they have and Jared Bednar as a coach can take them back to another Stanley Cup. So,
yep, I agree with you. No fighting on my end.
It's good stuff there. We need to take our first break of the show, so let's make sure we jump over and do that. Of course, we are brought to you by the folks over at ENT Credit Union. The Broncos finally played their first game of the season. They managed to take home a win there, and ENT Credit Union is the official banking partner of the Denver Broncos. They even have a Broncos checking account that's built for fans. So jump in with the ENT Credit Union. Their Broncos account is loaded with all kinds of perks that get any Broncos fan fired up. Things like no surprise fees, no minimum balance requirements, and the money in your Broncos checking account even earns dividends. So it's already a great checking account, but then you layer on the Broncos fan perks. 10% off food and gear on game days at Empower Field, which might be a new field here in a little bit, it sounds like. And then you get a Broncos branded debit card to rep the team too, and a chance to win Broncos tickets simply by paying with your Broncos credit or checking debit card. I can speak. Every 15 swipes enters you for another chance to win. So jump in. If you're ready to bank like a Bronco, go to ent.com/DNVR. That's ent.com/DNVR to sign up for a Broncos checking account today. ENT Credit Union is insured by NCUA. Membership required. Annual percentage yield account requires associated ENT Broncos debit card. Once you've got yourself all set up with ENT, make sure you also get into the official vehicle of us here at DNVR and the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche in Toyota. They have a vehicle for everyone. They've got trucks like the Tundra, SUVs like the 4Runner, sedans like the Corolla, whatever it might be. Toyota has you covered with 17 different all-wheel drive vehicles that, if you're an off-roader, you can take them out up into the mountains and have some fun with them that way. Not really for me, but I like my four-wheel drive so I can keep grip on the road in the crazy Colorado weather. Either way, Toyota has you covered with that, and they also offer the most low or zero-emission vehicles combined more than any other automaker out there. So jump in with 16 different hybrids. The Tundra iForce Max, they even have trucks that are hybrid too. Of course, you can get a Toyota at your local Front Range stores, including AutoNation Toyota, Rapids, Centennial, Corbin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, even beyond the Central Division, you've got a Stanley Cup. You're one of the best coaches in the league. If the Avs were to let him go, a team would hire him within days. It would be similar to the Jim Montgomery situation, which we get to talk about in a little bit here. If we're going alphabetical, though, Chicago is up next with Jeff Blashill. Now, Chicago is a bad team. I think they are still not probably where they want to be. Blashill his last coaching job was Detroit when they were bad. Our boys over at CHGO seem pretty excited about what he can potentially bring, and maybe he understands the type of situation that a team like Chicago is in right now. But I'm curious your thoughts. Can Blashill's systems make Chicago at least competitive this season?
Yeah, and like you said, that's the window they're in, right? Totally different than the Avalanche. Their window is growth. It's progress. It's adapt. It's how the kid's gonna adapt to the NHL. How the kid's gonna show where they're at in their development. As we all know, it takes time. So now I think on the coaching side of things, Luke is an unbelievable human being. Richardson, Was a guy that done a great job in Montreal as an assistant, right? He was in Ottawa. He'd been around. He played a gazillion games. Good human being. Shows up there, and I think you're showing up for. Hate to say it, but it's for failure, right? You know what I mean? Because it's that they're not, the roster's just not good enough. So you're there, you're coaching, and then you get judged on the wins and losses, and then you get let go, right? After a little bit of growth, a little bit of a couple years showing that but at the end of the day, the roster is just not good enough.
Sure.
Now you're moving on to Blashill, which of course now it's been in Tampa last year's assistant. He was ahead in Detroit all those years. He kind of learned a little bit under Babcock. He's got I think a lot of structure and a lot of defensive priorities in a sense. Like I think a guy like Bedard's gonna again, we talked about that the other day. He's gonna have to buy in, right? You're talking about CHGO, our sister show in Chicago. I think Tony, friend of our show, Tony Granado, was on their show, and I think he believes Blashill can do a good job, right? I was listening to a little bit, and it's like anything else. Bednar a few years back, you needed McKinnon to buy in, right? You needed Gabe to buy in, you needed Natushkin, and those guys bought in, and that's what led to a Stanley Cup championship. So I think Blashill can bring that accountability. He can bring that to them. It's going to start with Bedard to make sure he buys in, and then the rest of the guys and the Nazars, and then go from there. I mean, I don't think it's a bad hire at all by any means. I just feel that Luke was destined for failure, with the Blackhawks, the way they were set up, you know what I mean? And now I think that there's going to be a little bit more pressure now on those guys to actually show the curve going up a little bit, and not be stale and not be, you know what I mean? So I think there's going to be some pressure here starting this year to do a little bit better. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team. I don't think they are. But I think you're going to have to show a little bit more improvement, a little bit more, now they have a goalie, right, in Spencer Knight. Now they have, some young Ds that should be playing in the NHL next 10, 15 years. Are they ready? Time will tell. And then, you got to surround Bedard a little more, and we'll see. And if we're right or wrong, but they have some good players now. Coaching, comes into play. And Blashill's been under Cooper the last couple years, a guy that just won multiple cups. And, maybe he's got a few more things up his sleeve, and we shall see what's going to happen there. I mean, they changed pretty much their whole staff. I do believe Michael Pekka's there now, right? And anyway, I mean, they changed everything. So time will tell, but I think it's more middle of the pack, coaching type of. I mean, again, until Jeff kind of has more success at the National Hockey League level, like I said, you can't put him in the same tier as like Bednar. I think that's why it's a clear cut that Avalanche are an S, and these guys would be more, I don't know what you think, but like a B or something. I don't know,
But clearly he was doing something right. Detroit kept him around for 7-8 years. So he earned his job there, but he also had exactly one winning season. And part of that is Detroit was a bad team, sure. But I do think, especially, you look at some of those years, and it doesn't feel like he got the most out of that Detroit team. Similar to Bednar in the last 3 years. It does not feel like Bednar maybe got the most out of the Avs in the last 3 years, but Bednar also had 5 years before that where it did feel like he was extracting just about every ounce he could out of Colorado, right? So he gets a little bit of credit for that. Now, is Blashill a coach that Chicago's bringing in to beat the universe? Probably not. Blashill is a guy that probably understands his role in Colorado and what he needs to be doing. So it's what it is.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see, but you're right. Maybe it is a C. That's a great question. As a builder, he's got a cup now. He's got a cup, and you got to remember the Hockey Hall of Fame is the Hockey Hall of Fame, not the NHL Hall of Fame, correct? So, he's got an American Hockey League championship. He's got an ECHL championship as a coach. and I believe as a player he won it as well, the ECHL. So if you're asking me, and he's got again one of the longest tenured position right now in hockey in the last 10, 20 years, whatever it is. Like it's unheard of. Coaches get fired after 12, 24 months right now. It's crazy. And then these guys are going on 10 years. So my answer would be yes, just because of pretty sick what I just rattled off, NHL, AHL, ECHL, as a coach. And then, obviously he would be going in there, not to bash him as a player, but he's not going in there as a certainly would. Jack Adams would probably solidify it, which you and me always talk about it. We feel that he's always like,
Yeah, he deserves one for sure.
Deserves one at some point. And Chad is right too about like all the stuff like they say. Oh, he hasn't got the results, and that's true. And I think as a coach, that. And again, I'm not saying he's going to get fired. I'm saying at some point he will. Right? I mean, it's life. It's just a cycle of life. If you're not getting results, my old man used to talk about this all the time, and he used to remind us in meetings all the time, guys. We get judged on who wins the last game. That's how we get judged in our business, and that's what results are. And again, you reach a certain level of expectations where losing in the second round, or a third round, even that is like, it's not good enough. You know what I mean? Like it's not good enough. And for the Avalanche, they're in that window where it's you got to win and win the last game to feel that you did something. So we'll see. But I think to answer the question, I do believe he would be material for Hockey Hall of Fame. Absolutely.
Yeah, if he retired tomorrow, I'm not sure he gets in, but
No.
a handful more years. Obviously, if he gets another cup, I think he's in for sure. But even if he coaches for 3 more seasons, he's gonna break 500 wins. Like he's gonna have all the markers of a guy that gets into the Hall of Fame. So I really do think he will be a Hall of Fame coach. Not yet though. Still gotta get there across the finish line. The other question here is we have a couple minutes before our break. Pete Deboer. I know he's not in the division anymore. Obviously, significantly good at beating Jared Bednar in the playoffs. But beyond that, do you think he's a better coach than Bednar? DeBoer, multiple conference finals, multiple cup appearances in his career, but he's never won it.
Yeah, and I've met Pete many times. He's a superb man, like good man, good hockey guy, good coach. But different style than Jared Bednar, right? As we saw in the playoffs with Ottinger, right, with the handling of the goalie, situation. Pete's a little more fiery, a little different that way, a little bit more vocal, a little bit more, going towards the media and stuff. Do I like that? Sometimes you need that. Sometimes it's harmful, So I think Pete is more a fit coach, and that's what I was saying earlier. Like sometimes you're a good fit somewhere, and you're just not a good fit somewhere else. I do believe that he will find work. He's always found work. He's always, you know, he's been at multiple locations. That doesn't mean you're a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we think like, oh, you get traded all the time because you're a bad dude. No, that doesn't mean that. You know what I mean? So I do believe is he a better coach than Bednar, and I think circumstances. I mean, I'm not going to say that the Stars all played. They sure won the series, but I'm not going to say that they all played the Avalanche in that series. You know what I mean? So again, take it for what it's worth. But you get judged on who wins the game, and that's it. And the Avalanche didn't. So, but if you want to think that way, then you have to think the other way as well and say, well, DeBoer's never won, and then Bednar's got one. So does that make him a better coach? Well, I don't know. So you can't have that argument just on one side. You got to have it all the way. So I think they're both tremendous coaches. I'm not going to put Deboer in there because he's not there anymore. So we can't, on today's purposes, we can't put him in there on a tier anywhere. But I think he would certainly, and I think he would be in, if it was Deboer, it would be next to the Avalanche logo right there, at the top.
He'd have been an S for sure.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we don't have to do the debate of whether Bednar's the better coach or Deboer is the better coach anymore. But just to give Deboer some flowers, 2 cup finals. Obviously, he lost both of them. He's taken 4 different teams to a conference final, including in the last 6 years, he's been to 5 conference finals. He's really good at getting to the conference finals. That's a really good head coach. Yes, he had good teams, but still, that's a guy who knows his way around hockey pretty darn well. You have to give him a lot of credit for what he's done as a head coach. Yeah, I can say that now because the Avs don't have to play him in the playoffs anymore, and he can't just $20 off your first purchase when you download the Game Time app and use code DNVR. Of course, terms apply there, but Game Time has a ton of different ways to get you great prices on tickets, whether it's their section selector, whether it's last-minute deals, or if you search for tickets, you can use the Game Time Picks feature, which filters out all the junk and only shows you the best tickets for the best prices for what you're looking for. They even include all the fees, so you see the actual price that you're going to pay. You can jump in with them. Again, download that Game Time app today. You can go get your tickets. You can even see in a lot of stadiums what your seats will look like. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download that Game Time app, create your account, and use the DNVR code for $20 off your first purchase. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Once you got your tickets, you can also make sure you're getting in to play some sports, or rather, maybe your kids can play some sports with the Gold Crown Foundation. You grew up playing basketball in Colorado like I did. Chances are you played in the Gold Crown Competitive Basketball League. It's what I did. I didn't play at the gold level. I wasn't that good, but they have multiple different teams, gold, silver, bronze, and then they also have club teams, elite, and open. So they have a team that just about anyone can get on in divisions 4th through 8th grade. It's a fun league, super awesome to play in. They go to some amazing courts, both high school level, as well as their own Gold Crown Field House, which has 6 different courts. It's a great place to go play some basketball. Now is the time to find a team in your area. Tryout pages are on their website, or you can check with your local school. You can learn more and sign up by scanning that QR code on screen right now, or you can head to goldcrownfoundation.com for more info. They also have other sports as well, including girls flag football and volleyball. So if you are into those sports, make sure you go check them out. Again, goldcrownfoundation.com to sign up and for more info. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast as we move to the new head coach in Dallas, in Glenn Gulutzan. Not as good as Pete Deboer. I think we can comfortably say that. He does have a winning record across his career, which was a little bit of time in Dallas, also coached in Calgary for a little while. Is this a proper step back for Dallas? Obviously, look, Deboer's comments about Ottinger, I get it. They needed to move on. His time had come up in Dallas. But can Gulutzan have the same impact in Dallas as Deboer did?
Yeah, I mean, Gully's path is like a little bit like, if you want to take it like Bednar. You know what I mean? Like he's a guy that played in the minor leagues, and all of a sudden he's coaching in the ECHL in Las Vegas. That's where I remember him from. It's way before the Knights were born, and kind of made his name in there, and then made his name, in Dallas Stars farm team, a little bit like Bednar did, right, with Lake Erie Monsters. You know what I mean? And Gully had some success there with Dallas as an AHL team, and then was given a shot there in Dallas, right? You know what I mean? And I think Jim Nill must like him. You know what I mean? And then obviously you're a rookie coach, and you're new, and I haven't been around the league that much, and all of a sudden he was let go, which, like, again, we talked about that earlier. Everybody gets let go in this league, so it doesn't make you a coach. And the fit wasn't right. Then he ended up in Calgary, and same thing. You know what I mean? Like the fit was it was okay for a while, and then all of a sudden it wasn't there, and then went and kind of learn more and go back. Sometimes it's like a player, right? I always say, again, for a coach, it's a little different, because if you want to hit the reset button, sometimes you do that with a player. You throw him in the press box for a game and you scratch him and say, hey, go figure it out a little bit. Go see what's going on from up top, from afar. So I think when you're a head coach and then you can step away and then go be an assistant coach for, he was in Edmonton for so many years now, and then get some success. And yeah, you got McDavid and Draisaitl and stuff, but kind of ran the power play and kind of made a name for himself again. Using the best of the abilities the assets you have in front of you to. Can you imagine if it went sour? Then you wouldn't be talking about him to get a new head coaching job, right? You'd be talking about him
Sure.
like Ray, right? Where it didn't work, and Ray got let go, right? Bennett. So now he's in a different situation. His second tour of duty in Dallas. They say he's a good coach, good person. Maybe that's what they need. I don't know. I'm not sure. But they went far with Pete Deboer, but they didn't go, where they felt they needed to go, as a lot of people, kind of the Avalanche window, right? Which is they feel they can win it all. And people feel they can win it all. So I think nothing short of being in the finals is just sad, especially when you go and get, Mikko Rantanen and give him a lot of money. And, so I think somewhere, somehow they expect to win. And I think Gullitson's not going in there a la Jeff Blashill in Chicago. You know what I mean? Where, there's no
Yeah.
pressure to, where now this is like Dallas Stars don't make the playoffs next year. They get bounced in the first round. Well, I think the first guy they're going to look at, I don't care how long you've been there, is going to be Gullitson, for sure. I think it's just the way, that's just the way that it's going to play out. And if it goes well, then good on him, right? So,
Where would you tier him? Certainly above Blashill, certainly below Bednar, but is it a B or is it an A?
yeah, I think you have to, for me, my criteria would be put it in the B, just because um, let's see what you got, right? Right
Yeah.
now, as second chance, and where, again, this is a team, unlike Chicago, and I'll say it again, just like the Avalanche, we're going to judge his end of the year season by how far he got,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
and it better be far, or it's going to be a disappointment.
Yeah. I have him in B as well, just because there's a certain amount of unprovenness there. I agree with you.
Yeah,
At the end of the year, if they do well, it could very easily move up to A. If they do poorly,
sure.
yeah, like you said, he may. If they do poorly enough, he may not be a coach by the end of the year. So
That's, so,
definitely a we'll see.
yeah.
I would put with Galutsin. Next up, we have Minnesota with John Hines. Hines very long, been in the league longer than Bednar. One of the few coaches that has obviously bounced around to multiple teams, unlike Bednar. But a guy with over 300 wins, a guy that you look at his career and he's really good at getting teams to the wild card spot and then losing in the first round. That's what his track record has shown. And how good are those teams? Those New Jersey teams he started out with weren't great. That Nashville team was kind of on the downslide, but was still good. And then Minnesota, these last couple of years, he missed the playoffs once and then lost in the first round last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seems pretty consistent, but I just don't know that it's high end coaching.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it's more like, last year I think this surprised a lot of people, right? I didn't have them to be as successful. I was like, oh, sure, they took a nosedive towards the end, and that's how they ended up, but they still made it, and they lost
Yep.
Kaprizov and all that kind of stuff. So, um, my take on him is I don't know him at all. I've never met him, but seems to be very popular with USA Hockey. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
good. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Billy's going to be the GM of USA Hockey, so Billy's a big USA Hockey guy. Garrett. So you go with guys that right, from the Pittsburgh days, USA Hockey days, or whatever it is. And I think this is a very organized guy. I think he's very methodical. That's what it looks like. So now, do I think he would be perfect as an Avalanche coach? The way he looks to be doing things, maybe not. But I think for Minnesota, I think he's a great fit in Minnesota, right? You know what I mean? Because of, and he seems to have the buy-in from Kaprizov, and so I think that's good there. Yeah, I think it's more same thing. I think it's more C coaching, because he hasn't been somewhere long enough where you can show that, oh, he's gotten some progress, and you know what I mean, and then all of a sudden he's let go, and he must be a good coach because he gets rehired right away. And some people are going to be like, oh, there's a lot of retreads. No, I know there's a lot of retreads. There's a lot of non-retreads as well. You know what I mean? So he's always kind of bounced back, right? Jersey and Nashville and here, and not here, but many. So he must do something right. Like I said, he looks to be a good family man, and I think he's got some good systems in the sense that I think he's pretty methodical, and I think his teams look well prepared. And I think he's just a good fit there. But again, probably a C because of never had that success, and when I say success, real success.
Yeah, his playoff record is 6-19. He's never even really had a competitive team in the playoffs. So
that's my point. Yeah,
tough there. I would have had him in low B, but high C is fine too. Just C ahead of Chicago. Yeah, I'm good with that. For that, I don't know. We'll see. Minnesota has been stuck in that mid-range mode too, so maybe they go well together in that sense. Maybe they can get over the hump and be a bit of a better team this year. Get a little bit more from Hines, but I don't know. Next up, Nashville. Former Av, Andrew Brunette. Kind of an interesting one. Obviously doesn't have a very long coaching track record, but was an assistant in Florida for a while, had 1 year as a head coach there right before they became the juggernaut that they are now. Then gets hired in Nashville, has a really good first season, loses in the first round, and then the disaster of a season that was last year for Nashville happens. So where do you put Brunette based on that? Obviously, us in Colorado may be a little bit more willing to give some rope, as Bednar's first year was one of the worst seasons in modern NHL history, and obviously things worked out after that. So can Brunette be part of the solution to this past season, or is he part of the problem?
Well, again, here's what I'll say about Andrew Brunette, ex-Avalanche and one of Joe Sakic's favorite line mates of all time. And if Joe was on the show right now, he'd tell you, love playing with Andrew Brunette. And Bruno couldn't skate. A different era back then, obviously, but he was not a good skater. Played on every expansion team there was. It was funny, but a very creative player, unbelievable with the puck. And when you can't skate like that, you got to be good and you got to think quick. And he was very a special player in that way. Now I think good person, not great person. And then translated into coaching. I think he's been able to be a great assistant coach. You know what I mean? And then got thrown into the fire a little bit in Florida when Joel was with the situation that happened with Joel and Quenneville, and then all of a sudden Bruno was given the reins, and there's a big difference between being a head coach and assistant coach. And this one, he really had no time to think a little bit, but he had some success. Then all of a sudden he's let go, whatever. So he went back to being an assistant, and then finds himself now in Nashville with the head coach. He does have that relationship. Bruno started his days as a player in Washington system in Baltimore, and that's when Barry Trotz was head coach in the minors, the Baltimore Skipjacks, and obviously a long history there that him and David Poile have. And then went on to Nashville, and Bruno was a player in Nashville in the expansion side of things. So he does have a boss in Barry Trotz that really understands him and knows him. So that's why you're looking at last year, and it's like, okay, is this just a normal thing, or was it just kind of one-off? Now, with that said, giving him praises and everything, well, he's probably the guy, if you're asking people who's on a short leash, I think he'd be on a lot of people's mind, because of disastrous season last year after spending all that money on free agency. So now it hasn't translated into, success other than that little bit that he had in Florida, and, which was right before, the Florida Panthers of what they are now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's got a little bit of something with it, bringing them there. And so now I think you see people's true colors right through adversity. He's a great human being. Now we'll see as a coach what he can do. You know what I mean? With the adversity that he just went through, and can they recover from that? Can they recover from even a couple comments that were made by some of the guys at the end of the year about
Yeah.
questioning like the way things were run and things were. That's not always what you like to hear, but I think in private you like to hear that through the media. Probably not, but so we'll see, and we'll see how they react, and we'll see people's true colors. They're not just him, but the players as well, and see if they can stand up. And again, we went through their roster the other day. I don't know. It's a big question mark there.
I do wonder if there is a little bit of a clash of styles with Barry Trotz as the GM and Brunette as the coach, because obviously being a GM is different than a coach, but Trotz tried to win every game 1-0, right, back when he was a head coach, and Brunette has a little bit of a more offensive tilt than that. Now, they have plenty of theoretical offensive weapons that did not produce at all last year, so how much of that is it was a bad year? How much of that is they got a bunch of old guys that maybe aren't quite as good as they were? How much of that is Brunette's systems? I don't know. I'm not deep enough in the Nashville system to really be able to pick that apart.
Well, what I can add to that is, remember we talked about Kaprizov, we talked about McKinnon, those guys and company buying into Bednar, right, a few years back. Well, the guys, Marchessault, Stamkos, the guys that have been there before, but also the guys that just showed up there, better buy in or it's not going to work, right?
True.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
not going to work. So it didn't look that there was a buy-in last year, and I think that's where the problem started.
Yeah, I think I have to put him in C.
I agree.
I think behind Hines, I think he has to go behind it. Ahead of Blashill's fine. And he's another one where it's like, all right, if this year goes well, he could easily move up to B or A. But
absolutely,
from what we saw last year, I think it's hard not to put him in C for starting off reasons. Next up is St. Louis with Jim Montgomery. My opinion, probably the second best coach in the division now with the Borgon. He has some second round experience. He's been on a handful of teams. He was with Dallas originally. That was his first head coaching job and did a good job. He brought him to the second round in his first year. His second year, he was 17-11 when he got fired. So wasn't even having that bad of a season when he got fired. With Boston, had a couple of playoff experiences. Again, didn't start horrible. He was 8-9-3 with Boston when he got fired 20 games into the season. And then Boston absolutely fell off a freaking cliff without him. So feather in his cap there. And then he comes to St. Louis and helps them turn that ship around and gets them to the playoffs last season. Monty's a really good coach. I can't see too many arguments for him being any lower than the A tier.
No, I agree. And I think Monty, like DU guy and obviously Montreal guy like myself, he's done a great job as a coach, right? He's a motivator. He's a guy, he's the player's coach, right? That people like to say. And again, clearly what happened there in Boston is very simple. It's just, there wasn't going to be a happy, long marriage. And I think that he felt that he wasn't going to be long, and I think the management felt that he wasn't going to be there long term, and he was on the last year of his deal, and rest is history. I don't think anyone in Boston, just spending a lot of time in the Boston area, was blaming Jim Montgomery. I think it was more like they couldn't get anything done long term. Then they're like, well, so what are we doing? Might as well just move forward. And to my good buddy and friend of our show and former Avs coach Joe Sacco, you know what I mean? They kind of, again, they stripped down the team after, as we all saw. And so your margin of error is really thin. And what's his name in the net? Swayman was not at his best last year. He did refer to himself in the third person last week that, Jeremy Swayman is feeling better. That's funny. He seems like a good dude. I was laughing, but again, a lot of expectations with that contract didn't go well.
Yeah.
Name me a goalie that's struggling. I'll name you a bad coach. And again, same thing. That's kind of where Monty fell last year. Monty's a great coach, and look what he did in St. Louis. All of a sudden they're like, wow, they get themselves into that situation where nobody would have thought they would be in that situation. So he did a great job. It's a happy marriage, long-term marriage for him to be in St. Louis. His wife being from there, and all that kind of stuff, and obviously a relationship with Doug Armstrong when after he left Dallas, he went started as an assistant in St. Louis. They gave them that extra chance there to get back in the league, and he ran with it, and they felt that it was an awesome situation. I think the players love him. I think he's done an unbelievable job. And you're right, he would be an A-level coach. And, he's not, he hasn't won yet. Right. You know what I mean? And he had an unbelievable season in Boston, but they never, made it all the way through. They got the most regular season points in the history of the league, which is awesome. Great coach. Made a difference the short time in St. Louis. Can he keep doing it? Time will tell here, but certainly a great coach and a guy that should be in probably A.
Yeah, I definitely have him in A. It's maybe a guy with still a little bit to prove at the NHL level in the playoffs. He's never made it past the second round, but it clearly has had a positive impact on certainly Boston and St. Louis in his coaching time there, and his time in Dallas wasn't that long, but had a good run there too. So I do think he deserves that spot. Next up, you have Utah, which has Andre Turnge, the Bear, as they call him. This one is interesting because, yeah, we've talked about, hey, there might be a little bit of warmth on the seat to a Bednar if he has a bad year. Galutsin needs to come out of the gates hot, or there might be some issue with him there. But here, going back into Arizona history, they haven't made the playoffs in a very long time. However, under the Bear here, improvement every single year over the last 4 years. They've won more games every single season. With that being said, they still haven't made the playoffs. It does feel like a team, especially with some of the moves they made this offseason. Expectations should be a wild card spot at least. Could there be a little bit of warmth here for Turnke?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, a very organized man, right? Structured, been there for a bit now. Seems to have a good relationship with Armstrong, right? His boss there, which is very important. But I think you're right. The word is expectations. For once now, I think the expectations this year are different than they've been before. Therefore, I do believe that's why it's a little bit hot there on the seat. And you don't advocate for anyone, getting fired. That's not what I'm saying. But at some point, getting better for 4 years in a row, it's not jumping in the playoffs. It's not winning a round. It's not winning 2 rounds. So I think they're going to have to get there at some point, or else what are they going to drag this for 35 years of, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we're doing better. We got draft picks. We got this and that, which is fine because that's what you need to do. And they've done a good job at it. But now it's about winning, right? This job is about winning. It's not about anything else, and they got to start, quote unquote win, you know what I mean? So, and I think that if Bear, doesn't start winning, then it could be hot. Absolutely. I think it's going to be scorching. He could be the guy that, again, if you ask people who's on the hot seat, because of all the reasons right now, again, doesn't make him a bad coach, doesn't make him this or this or that. It's just, is he the guy looking forward that we see ourselves winning a Stanley Cup with the group that we have?
Yeah, I do think he deserves a little bit of credit. He had them with a winning record last year at very least. So things have been moving in the right direction, but has it been moving at a fast enough pace is my question. He hasn't coached anywhere else, so the Arizona-Utah tenure is the only thing we have at the NHL level. He has a pretty good track record in juniors, but that's a different world compared to the NHL. Where would you have me? C again?
I think he's got to. Again, he's got to be in C, which is like vanilla, right? You know what I mean? That's you spell vanilla with a C in our show today, right? Just kind of, blend in, like so I don't know. I mean, that's where I would put them. Again, you got to
Uh,
get success.
so ahead of Blashill or behind Blashill? Then that's my question.
Put him ahead of Blashill just because in my, you just said it, 4 years of getting better, and
Yep.
and I think Jeff just hasn't coached in a while right now, head coach. So let's just push him to the right for no other reason than that.
We might have to move Blashill down to D. Just relative. I don't.
Yeah.
We have 4 teams in C. Maybe Blashill should just be a D. We grade on a curve around here. Uh, last head coach,
No
though.
problem.
Yeah, we'll move him down. Scott Arniel with Winnipeg. Did have a brief stint in Columbus in 2010 through 2012. Had a really good season last year. 56 wins, topped the Central Division. Did make it to the second round where they ultimately lost to Dallas, but did get out of that first round. It's their best season, regular season ever, I believe, as the Jets at least. Optimistic stuff, but they lost a decent number of pieces to their lineup. You're dealing with Jonathan Toews as your 2C this year. Is Scott Arniel the right man for the job?
You're talking about a question of fit, right? I think
Yep.
he's a Winnipeg Jet. Been there a while. Him and Bonus did a wonderful job. He took over Rick when he had, I think Rick was dealing with some personal issues, and and then Arniel coached a lot of games, so nothing new when Bonus stepped aside. So I think, name me a good goalie, I'll name you a good coach. So
You're not wrong.
said,
You're not wrong.
I mean, when goalies are stopping everything and they get incredible numbers like Hellebuck's had, well, numbers tend to be good across the board, right? Because goalies will mask a lot of things. So especially the W and L side of things, So all of a sudden you get a win, right? I don't know. I would say he's probably just because they got the best points in the history of best season points in the season for the history of the Jets. They haven't really found that success in the playoffs. And again, name me a good goalie, I'll name you. And Hellebuck not been good in the playoffs, so it's a little bit relative to what we're saying here. I do believe he's probably in the B just because of he's got experience, he's been around. He seems to be maybe not by Mike Commodore or whatever, but there's guys that that like him. So you last long enough in this league, you must be doing something right. You know what I mean? I remember him as a player playing in Buffalo back then, but and again, his coaching career has been just outstanding. You know what I mean? Because he's been around so long. But yeah, I would say he's a B. And again, Winnipeg, so many things are tied to Hellebuck.
Yeah, it's true. As much as we like to do stuff like this and talk about the coaches, you can only coach the players you have, right? Your team is only so good at any given time, and you can only get so much out of them. Not that coaching doesn't matter; it does. The best coaches get the best out of their players on a consistent basis by using them in the correct ways. Arniel's a weird one because, we're going to put him in B because he has a really good season, but this is a guy with barely 200 NHL games coached. Still, and half of those were 15 years ago. So still kind of an unknown of what exactly he is when it comes to Winnipeg's head coach, but decent results so far. So I think B is fair.
I like it.
So there you go. We are in overtime here as the conversation continues online at thednvr.com. But this is our tier list for the coaches. We bumped Chicago down to D just so CHGO can continue to hate us. But
coming up here soon, and they'll be favored, for a lot of people to win the Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? And they should. From the coaching to the management to, of course, we like to nitpick at it. That's what we do. And fans, I think we as fans too, you nitpick because that's what you do. You nitpick on your team, right? Because that's who
Yep.
you see every day.
Yep.
But from goaltending to superstars to a back end that's to die for, and then franchise player up front and McKinnon. I mean, MVP candidate. It's tough not to pick them, and then they've had success. So I think that what you see is what you get on our board. I think it's a little bit relative to what you're going to see this year, yeah, I mean, like AJ said, poor Chicago. Maybe I think times will be tough a little bit in Chicago still, and but that doesn't mean that Jeff's going to do a bad job. You know what I mean? Like I just do believe that there's going to have to be some growth.
Look, it's a prove it league, right? If Chicago comes out, has a good year under Blashill, if Bedard becomes a truly elite player, at the end of the season, we're going to be tier listing them a lot different than we are right now. So,
absolutely.
We'll see how it goes. We are going to wrap up for today, though. We got another show coming to you tomorrow. Thursday's show, we'll be doing the prospect pyramid. Again, go check out the AJ piece on the predicted Avs 23-man roster because training camp is right around the corner. Beyond that, go support Big Brothers, Big Sisters. They're our campaign we're doing a fundraiser for right now on YouTube. Should be right next to the video here on YouTube, but also a great time to become a big and be an in-person supporter of some of the kids that are in need with them. I highly recommend you go check them out there. It's Big Brothers, Big Sisters month. So there's a link down in the description if you want to go check out their website, or you can donate directly through YouTube. So we appreciate y'all. That's going to be it for today. We will talk to you tomorrow. This has been the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, and we will see you.
We all silly like the mayor.